Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to you, wherever you are in the United States or around the world. We are so glad to join you today. My name is Regina, and this is Mavericks in Faith and Culture. And we have some, I can't say interesting, heartbreaking stories we're going to talk about tonight. Kevin, will you open us in prayer?
You bet. Father, we thank you and we praise you for another opportunity to come together as Mavericks in faith and culture and giving us an opportunity to engage with your people. We ask that you would bring people to this podcast that need to hear it and see it, and that you would be glorified in everything and all the subjects that we covered today and all of our talking points and conversations. We just ask that you would use us to your maximum glory, that your will be done in the earth. And we just thank you and we praise you for it now in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Amen. Amen. So, this story came to us actually by surprise, and we sent out an article and did a post on it just the other day. And our title was "The Silence is Deafening." And Kevin, you authored that story, so you want to tell us a little bit about Larisha Thompson, I believe is her last name, and what happened in that situation.
Yeah, what was particularly compelling about the story is that this was a horrible, heinous, opportunistic crime. It doesn't seem like it was a strategic or that it was planned, but she was at the wrong place at the wrong time, around the wrong people, and they pounced on her. But before I get to the details, what was particularly troubling was this story wasn't covered in your mass media. It wasn't covered in the ABC nightly news, NBC, CBS. It wasn't covered with your civil rights organizations. Larisha Thompson was a beautiful black woman, had 4 children, and you know doing her thing, just living life. And she was in her car. But even at that, you had civil rights organizations, not a single one, no major
Mhm.
news networks, no major media companies, no one picking up the story. And so let's get to the details. So she was accosted by 6. She was in her car, and she was stopped and accosted by 6 illegal aliens. People are not supposed to be here, and it was a crime of opportunity because they wanted to rob her. In doing so, they killed her, and so now you have those precious children that don't have a mother, and her family members don't have a sister and a aunt or whatever. And um, and and it was particularly heinous because it wasn't like it was um, she was doing anything. She was just driving. She just stopped, and it was an opportunity then for these people who were not supposed to be in America to really, sort of as a crime of opportunity is how I would see it. But here's the troubling part of it. As we roll back all of the provisions that were made under the Biden administration for illegal aliens here in America, these people are going to start getting desperate. So a lot of them are like President Trump has been saying, they're drug dealers, they're human smugglers, they're criminals, they're killers, they're rapists, they're child peddlers, whatever you want to call it. A lot of them have that background. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And as you roll back these entitlements that they had been given for the past 4 years under the Biden administration, and you start saving the American taxpayer money, by way of Doge and that, you start finding all these loopholes where these people were getting their provisions. I think we're going to see a lot more of these really, grotesquely heinous crimes of opportunity where, these South American gangs or gangs from any part in the world who are here and trying to, remain here. They're going to start to prey on American citizens. Um, I hope that's not what happens, but I think out of desperation, I think that's what will happen because I don't see a whole lot of these criminals, saying, "Hey, give me $1,000, I'll go back to Honduras or I'll go back to Venezuela." They're trying to camp out here as long as they can because they know that they can get arrested multiple times and still we'll have judges run them out the back door and prevent them from being handed over to ICE, or and prevent them from having to suffer any consequences. So this is really the land of opportunity. You want to talk about America as the land of opportunity for illegal aliens, baby? It is a dream. You can do whatever you want to do. You're not gonna get arrested. You're gonna be ushered out the back door of the judge's quarters. You're gonna be shepherded and protected. You're gonna get some money. So they don't want to leave anywhere. So I think that we'll start to see more of these types of crimes of opportunities, robberies, and these types of crimes that will start to escalate. We're in the summer months too, and I know we have more things to discuss, and I think we'll see more of this. It gets hot, people get agitated, and unfortunately, these are the types of crimes that happen in the summer months. This should be a warning sign for us all, though, to be vigilant, be prayed up, and to be vigilant, because these things can happen anytime, anywhere. You could be driving, something can break.
Yeah, and what was kind of shocking to me is that three of them were 13, 14, and 15. Like, that's young.
Yeah,
That's really young. And
yeah,
it was a group of six, and 13, 14, and 15 were the younger ones. And they also attempted to, I don't know if they committed the robbery at a convenience store, um, but they were arrested for both, for the murder for her and the robbery at the convenience store. And so they were looking for something, to do. They were looking for something to get in, whether they were looking for money, or I don't know what they thought they were going to do with her car. Maybe they wanted another car because they were in a car.
yeah. But it
They were
was
in
six
a
of
car.
them, so it's probably cramped.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, yeah, 13, 14, and 15 is young, but then, when you're in a group and you've got six people, um, you're going to be agitating each other, looking for opportunities to have fun. And that's not to say that we don't have American citizens who do the same thing,
Right,
right? It's not like this was just only something that happens only with illegal aliens. I
right.
think the heartbreak of it is that it did not, that they weren't supposed to be here,
That's right. That's
right?
that's the issue.
Um,
Yes.
and so they weren't supposed to be here. And we have also seen that Christine Reams, they reopened the voice office, Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement, and it was shuttered during the previous Biden administration. It was first launched under Trump's administration, and then it was shuttered during Biden, and so they've opened it again. And it's just unfortunate that we would have a need for this office, right? Um, at all, as if there's not so many other things going on in our communities that we need to put resources to that. Not that we don't want to, but it's just unfortunate that we have to.
Yeah.
And before I switch the subject to hate crimes, Neil, Lonnie, do you want to say anything?
I was just going to
Yeah,
just
go ahead,
say
Bob.
that it's almost as if they were emboldened, because of the lay of the land, that there would be no recourse, there would be no consequence for doing what they did. And I'm thinking back to when I was that age, and uh, get a bunch of young men together, and peer pressure or something else, either good or bad, to see how they could end up in such a state at such a young age.
Mm,
But given that they were illegals, and I love calling them illegal aliens, not illegal immigrants, it just, I guess, speaks to the times that we are in, and that we must just be cognizant of that. And as Kevin said, be ever vigilant in making sure that we watch and look over our collective shoulders. Neil?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we need to understand what's happening with respect to Black lives here, right? I mean, for decades, African Americans fought for civil rights, equal opportunity, and now they're gaining their ability to, as a voter bloc, they're moving over. So what's happening is the left has realized that they can't manipulate them anymore. They realize they're thinking for themselves. So what do? They want to replace them with illegal immigrants, right? Illegal aliens, to be more accurate, right? Why? Because if you come here on the Democrats' tax outlay, where you're getting money from the Democrats, you're going to keep them in power. Now, the question is, well, are they voting? They don't have to vote. They just have to populate the blue states so that the blue states get more politicians in power, right? So that's one of the things that they're trying to do is let's fill in California so that now we have more representatives. Why? Because 1 million people left California and they lost their representatives. So now they want to bring those 1 million people back. Same with New York and all that stuff. Of course, New York is realizing that this is not a plus. This is a minus because guess what? We can't afford them. Yeah, you may think that it's a good thing for you, but we can't afford them as a city. And that's why the mayor of New York is now being hunted and persecuted. But the thing that we have to understand is that, and we've mentioned this before, illegals, if you're in a sanctuary city, a lot of times you are not deported, even if you commit crimes. But if you do commit a crime, you can disappear without a trail.
Right.
You can go to another city, you can change your name, you have no tracking, you have no basis, right? An African American, let's say he tries to do the same thing. We know where he is. We have a social security number. We know where he lived or he lives. And if he's been in the system before, we have fingerprints, we have everything. They are far less likely to try and get away with something. So here are these three kids. They're probably brought up in a lawless environment. They go, hey, we can do anything we want. They don't think twice. They made a mistake because they didn't escape fast enough. And so law enforcement were able to find them before they disappeared. But trust me, there's a lot of other illegals that are killing people or doing whatever and disappearing. It's not that all illegals are bad.
Right.
They're illegal because they've broken the law, but many of them, you reap the consequences of what you do. So in other words, if you don't inspect, you can't expect, right? I mean, if you hire somebody and say, yeah, do the work, you'll get paid anyway, well, you're not going to get good work. If you bring somebody in the country and say, yeah, you can never get in trouble, you reap what you sow. And that's exactly what's happening here. And that's exactly what's going to happen if Trump doesn't get his way, the Supreme Court stops him from getting rid of these people. And I want to put this in perspective, having lived in so many different countries. There is no country in the world except for America, right? Or maybe Europe now, where you can just march into a country and demand things. All the Arab countries will kick you out or kill you. The Indian countries will put you in jail for years. The Asian countries will put you in jail for years. Come on, guys. There's a reason why they do that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And they won't let you in. And I've traveled in a lot of different countries, lived in different countries, resided, not just like for a month, like, 6 months, a year. And I'm an American citizen. And so with my passport, I can get into a lot of different places. But when it's time for me to go, it's time for me to go. And if I try to come back in, they're not letting me in.
Wow.
And our money as a US citizen, right? They want your money. They think you're wealthy. There's no such thing as a poor person in America, as far as, many other countries look at American citizens. But if I don't have the right paperwork, or if it's been past my allotted time to stay, my passport can be blacklisted. I can be kicked out of the country and never, Americans, and I'm working, and I'm giving back to the community, but I can't get in. I can't get in. But somehow with America, we have this different mindset, and it's like, well, not general. Certain administrations, let's put it this way, certain administrations have had the wrong mindset about protecting their own people and their own borders. But I've traveled a
Right.
lot. You can't get in if you don't have the right paperwork, and when it's time to go, I gotta go. Even if I'm paying rent there, buying their food, spending, I'm not getting any social services. There are not many. I can't think of many countries that have social services like we have in the U.S.
Yeah.
I can't. In some countries, they want to know how much money you have in your bank account before they'll let you in, because they don't
That's
want to
right.
be supporting you. Right?
Wow.
You've got to show proof of income stability because they don't want you to become a liability to their country. It's amazing what America has become, but I'm grateful to see us making efforts to turn around this
Make one-
barge.
yeah.
Hmm?
I want to make one more statement about this. Again, I just want us to not forget that what is particularly heinous about this whole incident is not only that this young lady lost her life and her kids are without a mother and her family, without a family member, but but the omission, the crime of omission that the media is doing, that the media has done on this particular, because it's
Hmm.
not convenient. This is not the illegal alien thing. This is their, this is their protected class. Like Neil was saying, these people, they can do all kinds of things. They still won't get arrested. They, got 15 DUIs and he's still around driving. Um, but any other ethnicity, you try to do that anywhere, and you're going to have the book thrown at you. So this is an unequal justice, an unequal playing field here in America,
Mhm.
where you have your protected, more noble, more virtuous, illegal aliens from all over the world that are here, and the American citizen is getting the book thrown at him.
Mhm.
But you see it not only in the justice system, you see it in the media. Illegal aliens, when they do heinous crimes, they try to cover it. They cover it up. I mean, they don't cover it in the media. Like
Right.
if she had been jumped by a couple of white men, I'm sure it would be national news and they'd be marches all over the country right now. But here you had 6
Mhm.
illegal alien, Venezuelans or El Salvadorians. I'm not sure which one.
Honduras.
But Honduras, and because of that, it's an inconvenient narrative. They cannot
Mhm.
and will not put this out there as an occurrence, because they don't want to have people sour on their protected class and protected
Right.
these protected group. So I think we should all have disdain for the media, because they're not, they've been one sided for a very, very, very long time. But
Mhm.
it's so much worse. They won't even report the news. That's important news that everybody should
Yeah.
be vigilant. They won't even report that because it's inconvenient. So
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I've been
And
watching mainstream media and I've seen very little about it.
yeah,
It's exactly what you said, Kevin.
yeah,
and unfortunately, we're going to continue the storyline around crime. Not only what happened just last night in Colorado, the group that were had been peacefully protesting, and they were
yeah.
attacked with a Molotov cocktail. Jewish group calling for the release of all the Israeli hostages, and they were attacked by a man who spoke, who cried out "Free Palestine" before he attacked them. Now, then last week, was it only last week or 2 weeks ago, about the couple from the museum, the Jewish couple that were
I think
murdered?
it's within the past 2 weeks. I think it's about 10 days ago. So
And we're not surprised by the hate, that's happening in our nation internally. I mean, sometimes I think we think that this is things that happen in other countries. right? Not in America.
Yeah.
And I think there's been this, not like just years, maybe decades of the desire to bring that same kind of terror to our American soil, right? There has been, it's almost like, you know what, you guys have had peace for a little bit too long, and it's time we bring the terror to you.
Mhm.
And so we can talk about from the 9/11 attacks to Oklahoma, to many single incidents, but now the anti-Semitism, because these past two were targeting specifically Jewish people, and I don't know how we're going to turn this around um, for our country, because it's not something we want to be known for. We feel like our streets as individuals, as communities, should be sure. We don't want crime, we don't want local crime, we don't want gangs roaming, but to target you because of your religious beliefs, that's just something I think as Americans we should wholeheartedly be against.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, you guys?
Well, I think the Jewish community is not just Jewish religious beliefs; that it's also Jewish ethnicity as well. But you know, we see this Jewish, anti-Israeli sentiment around the globe. I mean, there's a lot happening in Paris and parts of the UK right now in Europe. And since October 7th, since the Hamas terrorists did really did what they did against Israelis in Palestine. It's been an all-out war, as we know, with the Jewish army and the against the Hamas agitators in Palestine. But the outpourings of that has been on our college campuses here in America, and we're seeing that there was really no consequence up until Donald Trump got in office. There was absolutely no consequence for any type of campus tirade or campus destruction, campus chaos that was caused from these anti-Semitic, bigoted, hateful people. Mostly, a lot of them are Muslim, but not all. But they're just anti-Jew, and it's terrible what we're going through in the cycle in America right now and around the world, that is really turning their back again on Jewish people, Jewish community. And these two particular acts, the one that was with the young couple that were about to be engaged, leaving the museum in Washington, D.C., and they got gunned down. And apparently the terrorists who did that stood over the woman and shot her, just pumped her. And he was laughing the whole time. He was gleeful that he had an opportunity to kill some Jews. And then last night with this deranged terrorists throwing Molotov cocktails, a lot of them were grandmothers, elderly people, and a few children were horribly burned. And there's no remorse. There's no this is terrible, from the people who did it, or even an outcry from others who may be of the Islamic faith here, who say, look, this is not what we do. We need to stop. And that's the part it's the silent part that bothers me, because you have a lot of people that seems like they're providing a tacit wink and a nod with these types of activities. There's just not enough pushback. Now we know Donald Trump and the Trump administration, they're pushing back against the universities, and we have Pam Bondi that's going all in for anybody that does these terroristic, anti-Semitic acts. But the fact is, it just seems like there's not enough people in the American public that are really troubled by what we're seeing right now. And that's the kind of part, that's the part that I'm thinking, look, we're getting into the summer months, and the way it looks like there's probably going to be more of these types of events, unfortunately, that may occur, over the next few months, and it's just terrible.
Mm.
Uh,
It's very true, Kevin. And the thing I noticed is that within the Black community, and I'm generalizing here, but generally speaking, the talking heads within the Black community, hardly a peep out of them concerning some of these things that are taking place, and it's uh, it's disheartening. I mean, it's how can you not speak up and you're representative or part of a community that's had a history of having been persecuted for its ethnicity historically in this nation,
mhm.
and yet you don't want to rise up in support of those who, um, fate has been dealt against them. Um, but it's that age old thing, and I've heard this from some folks, and I don't know how to put it the way they put it to me, that well, that's just Jewish people are white people, so you know it's happening to white people, not Black people, and the ignorance there is that them not even fully understanding the history of ethnicity of people in this nation, and that there's a whole lot of folks that quote unquote are Jewish that have darker paint jobs. Amen.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's not even, and it's unfortunate that there's, that mindset about the color of your skin, right?
Yeah.
Because let the go into the Black communities and talk to them about what the immigration policies are doing to their communities, right? And um, yeah, and I remember there was a time when, and I don't even know that it's over yet, when the um, the illegal community was asking the Black community to stand with them,
Yep.
like, stand with us and help us fight for our rights. And we're like, no, you're taking rights. You're not even a citizen. We're
Mm,
barely getting the things that we need. And we're, fought this long to come up and have the kind of equality that we have now. And you walk in and you're just getting everything that our parents, and grandparents took decades to establish for us. And you're getting
mhm.
free housing, and we're not trying to say that social services have been good for the Black community, not in the least. But for those that have needed that hand up and that help, it has been a lifesaver. And the
That's
thing
right.
is when the illegals come into the communities, the money that could have gone to fix roads and education and after school programs, that money has been taken to give housing and things to people who are not citizens.
Exactly.
And so I understand that, like, there's a lot going on in our US world and world news, right? Just wars, rumors of wars, um uh not the taxes, the what's the trade thing? Oh my gosh, I totally lost my
Tariffs.
mind. Tariffs, thank
Tariffs.
you. And so I realize there's like a lot going on in the news that's in our face. What's happening with the Department of Education is taking people's interest. And it's kind of like, where do you put your angst? Like, where do you decide, oh, I'm just going to be all in on, I'm upset about this happening. And there's just too many things going on. But life, the taking of a human life,
Yeah.
that has got to be and remain forefront for us, and it cannot be lost uh, in the news feed, or, like you're saying, the kind of apathy that's
Yeah.
happening. We've got to be mindful, right? Isn't that the warning that that our love for one another will grow cold,
Yeah.
will wax cold?
Yeah.
And are we seeing that happening, and
Yeah.
can we reverse that? Like,
Yeah.
can we shift the other way, or is it a hill greased up with oil and we're on a sled and like there's just no way to stop. And I'm hoping that we can change that.
Yeah.
So I want to put this in perspective. We understand that the guy who killed, who attacked the Israeli protest in Colorado was Egyptian, and before that there was an American who converted to Islam, who killed a bunch of not Israelis, but in New Orleans, who killed a bunch of people for the cause. And then recently, the guy who killed the Israeli couple, who was not even I mean, his name is Rodriguez, right? He's Hispanic, right? He's not even Palestinian, and he's shouting "Free Palestine, Free Palestine." So you start looking at all this, and you go, "This has nothing to do with Palestine." And let me put that more in perspective with Egypt. We were just in Egypt, 2 years ago? All of us were there. Lonnie couldn't make it, but the three of us were there. And what's interesting about Egypt, and this was just a few months before the whole Gaza, the attack by the Gaza people in Israel. What was interesting about this is the Palestinians in Gaza could travel to Israel over the border, but they couldn't travel to Egypt.
Right.
Egypt had banned any Palestinians from going into Egypt. Now, understand this. Egypt does not like the Palestinians. Egypt as a state, in fact, Anwar Sadat was the first one to recognize Israel. He had they normalized peace relationships. And then we had the Abraham Accords, and of significance is Egypt was not part of the Abraham Accords because they already had a peace treaty with Israel. They didn't need to renew it. They didn't need to make a new one. So Egypt has been at peace with Israel for a long time. Now, yeah, they were part of the 7-Day War and all that. But since then, they've been at peace. Anwar Sadat was killed by Muslim extremists. But there is no vested interest in Egypt attacking Israel, right? If Egypt really cared about Palestinians, they would open up their border and the Palestinians could move there freely. They could live there freely. They could do what? They're not even allowed to go there. They're not allowed to work there, but they're allowed to work in Jerusalem, right? They can travel over the border and go into Israel and work there. And that's one of the reasons they got in there, to kill a lot of people. So we have to understand this has nothing to do with Palestine. It's a canard. It's a red herring. But I'll tell you why I don't think it's purely just a red herring. Because what prompts a person to go kill a number of people when he knows he's going to get caught? I mean, there's no way that these people thought, oh, yeah, I'll kill him and then escape. I mean, there's just no way. When you do something like that, the government's right all over you. Right? It's going to happen unless Biden's in power. Then I don't know. Then, yeah, you might have a chance. So he knew he was going to get caught. All three of these cases I mentioned, they knew they were going to get caught. They had no vested interest in Palestine. They are not Palestinians. As far as we know, they didn't come from Palestine. Their parents aren't Palestinians. They're not related to Palestinians. So what is causing all this attack? And there's only one thing. It's demon possession.
Bingo.
Neil.
That's it.
Neil.
You got it.
There he goes. We're gonna ban the DP word,
I mean, think about it. What causes you to do something? I mean, this guy's here illegally. He knows he's got the best of all worlds here, right? Nobody's coming after him because they don't know he's out here. It's going to be years before Trump digs him out because he's not looking for this guy.
Right.
What prompts a person to do something so stupid unless they're crazy?
You're correct. Yep, says evil. Yeah.
Yep, evil. You're absolutely right, and it is that. In the midst of that, though, I've also seen. Have you guys seen the surgence in faith, in Bible believing faith, in a way that's not oriented around the church? I know we didn't plan on talking about this. What I mean is, how do I, let me.
Are you talking about Jordan?
What I mean is,
Jordan Peterson has been, a lot of the guys who follow him, they're turning to, Charlie Kirk has been saying 10% of all young men under the age of 20 are becoming Christians. A lot of the men who are influenced by Jordan.
That's what I mean. I mean that it's not like in the midst of a church they're having this full-blown revival. I mean, there's something happening outside the four
Nice.
walls.
Yes. You see it in
That's
social
what I mean.
media. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, there's something happening outside the four walls, and you know, you've seen it sometimes in the Jesus movements and those things that have happened where all these young people come together and they're worshiping and raising their hands. But then I feel like we're seeing a resurgence in the search for faith. And maybe it's because of everything that is happening in the world. But I don't, as much that we see as criminal crimes and things happening, I don't know that I feel necessarily that darkness is really overtaking. I feel like light is shining so bright in individuals, and I see it outside of the four walls of the church. It doesn't mean that the church is not involved, and I'm not trying to say the church is dead. I am not. This is not about bashing churches. I'm just talking about there seems to be, like, even at the Charlie Kirk, when he would have his events and he'd be meeting, like, this is like a political event, but faith was there.
Yeah.
Like, people of faith were there. And so that's what I'm talking about, right? And like what you said about Jordan Peterson, and even just across, not just in the US, but I just think there are spaces in the world. Like, I know we hear about the UK shutting down, really cracking down on people that are praying out on the street corners. You know, but yet it seems like there's been an increase of people praying on the street corners. I don't know if the news is just catching it because now they're penalizing them, but whatever it is, it's motivating other people. Like, I will not be silent.
Yeah.
About this, and that gives me hope. I feel like even in my own life, this ability to be able to demonstrate my faith in ways that, you know, I never thought of before. And I think I feel like there's this hunger underneath that people are even searching for God more than I can't say than used to be, because, you know, social media has a way of amplifying things. And so I can't, you know, I don't know that I think it's only a few people, and because social media is really not going to amplify anything for God. So I have a feeling that it is not just a few small numbers. I think it is a large wave
But there,
that is happening as far as
there's some
people.
rumors.
Go ahead.
I just heard it today that there's a big move in Silicon Valley to come back. I just heard it today. I haven't verified, to start bringing people going back to Protestantism, not Catholicism, but Protestantism, coming back, and not the woke churches, but the conservative churches. I just heard about it. Somebody sent me a link. I watched it. I did a little bit of research, um, but I want to look into more of it to see how true it is. But and that would be very interesting, because why would the Silicon Valley people who have eschewed all this, um, you know, who are into the globalism and all that, want to now start turning back? So I don't think it's the leaders. There are some leaders involved, but I think there's a lot of people who have been very quiet and understated before are now coming up and being more. I mean, we know of a lot of Christian leaders in Silicon Valley. You know, the HR lady that at Cisco, for instance, the um, Pat from Intel, who's now leaving Intel. You know, there's a whole bunch of these Christian people there. But you know, when I say leaders, I'm talking about, you know, Mark Zuckerberg and people like that. They're not, right, but or Jeff Bezos. I think they're part of the globalists. But I think the people who work for them may be now saying, "Hang on a minute, maybe I'm safe enough in my duties and what I'm doing and my value to the company that I can be a bit more bold. So I don't know. It'd be very interesting to see what the research shows.
Yeah, I think that I think the trend is turning back towards Christendom. I think if you look at the cycles, atheism has been, a pretty big trend in America for a generation or so. Um,
Mm.
but now, you have some of the most prominent used to be atheists, like Joe Rogan, who's now attending church every Sunday. Joe Rogan. And he's a huge megaphone. I mean, the largest social media person on the planet right now.
Right.
And then you got, and then you have, like you said, Jordan Peterson, who was a renowned atheist, and now he's not declaring either way. But the idea is, and his wife is a Catholic, and
Yeah, and
so
his daughter is a
and
Protestant.
so I think because he's such a intellectual, and these intellectuals have a real hard time with not having all the answers. So I think that's really his last thing that he needs to come to recognize and understand about the Lord is that he has all the answers, not you. But
Mm.
but that's the
And by the way, we can prove that scientifically
mm,
with the Gödel
Yes.
incompleteness theorem. I'm actually writing an article on that. It's a
wow,
scientific mathematical proof
wow,
that there are things that can only be revealed to you that cannot be proven by science.
wow, wow. So
Mm.
I mean, you have apologists like Neil and other apologists that have been making pretty good inroads especially over the past, I'd say, 10 years. That is really having, and they're proposing questions to the atheists and agnostics and just, nuns to about, well, how do we, how does life begin? How do we all get here? How do you explain, what, and the younger people who are coming up are listening to this dialogue, and they're saying, yeah, I mean, you atheists, you don't have an answer. And so they're at least backing up and realizing within themselves that there must be a creator. There has to be something bigger, because this atheist story, this agnostic story is not making sense, you know.
Mhm.
So at least I hope that.
Mhm.
But the other thing is that where evil abounds, God's grace abounds that much more, right? I forgot which verse that is, but
Yeah.
so evil has been horribly abounding over the past, 15, 20 years. And now God's grace is abounding that much more. And perhaps it's this generation, what they call it, Generation A now or something like that. That is, and that would be the teenagers and in their early 20s that are now not following Gen Z. They're kind of, so we'll see, man. But I think there is a legitimate a legitimate move towards Christendom that is afoot, especially with the younger generation.
And I think so in faith across the world, um, for a time we were talking about all these Christian pastors that were falling. Remember
Yeah.
that? They were just being uncovered and
Yes.
were frost, Um, and I think there was a time too when, remember, mega churches were all the thing, like mega church, like just mega church this and mega church that.
Mhm.
And I don't know, maybe Neil, if you know, if it's just a natural wave of what happens in faith, right? You have big explosions or something that trends, and then it crashes, and then things simmer down, and then faith begins to rise again. Do you know what I
Yeah, no, I
mean?
understand what you're saying, and I wish I could say that, but it doesn't always work that way. And you know the history of the Jews. Sorry, not the Jews. Well, not only the Jews, but of Israel just as well as I do. Where it there seems to be a resurgence of faith, and then you end up with Jeremiah and nobody else. You know? And he gets thrown in a well. Right? Nobody's listening to him, right? And then they all get taken to Babylon, and half of them gets killed, right? Uh, and
Yep.
so, yeah, I wish I could say, yeah, there's always a resurgence, but sometimes God doesn't do it that way, right? He destroys nations, and so I'm hoping, but by seeing this resurgence, I'm hoping he's going, okay, my work here is not done, right? Maybe, maybe there is a resurgence coming. But here's the thing, though. I think in all of these things that we see and do, God always, throughout that period of time when Jeremiah was speaking, and all these people, and we see all these kings coming in and going, it really was the free will of the people. Because whenever the people said, yes, we're going to listen to God, things were extended and things were better. And let me explain what I think it is in the Bible. In my book, I explain this. I say, look, it's a natural consequence of obeying God that you have a prosperous society. You have prosperous society, you have healthy people, you have less corruption, you have freedom, and with freedom comes strength, military strength. While Israel was doing well, and they were prospering because they were obeying God's law, nobody could actually take them over. And not only could nobody take them over because of their might, but God would intervene, right? So it's a bit of both. And so I think God has intervened many times in the case of America. And I believe that just the very foundation of America was based on God saying, I'm going to create the most evangelistic nation in the world. I'm going to create the most giving nation in the world. And this is America. But when America stops being that, the question is, will God then, take his grace away from it, and then we suffer the natural consequences of broken families, broken homes. Nobody's out there to fight our war, to protect our wars. We have corrupt leaders who send our kids to corrupt wars, to die for no reason, things like that. And I think then we suffer the natural consequences. So, it's hard for me to say, yes, that's how it happens. But I'm hopeful that we're seeing a resurgence, because it's been, the evil has been running our country for way too long.
Yeah.
Mhm. I was speaking with Carmel Melamed, who is a Jewish uh, journalist out of Southern California. He's a Mizrahi Jew, and so his family's from Iran. And he was telling me that there is a major movement taking place in Iran. And I was thinking he was referring to Judaism, and he says, no, Christianity that's taking place there. And I found that interesting. I wanted to see if we couldn't get him at some point onto our show platform to talk about what he is discovering there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. He said, I said, what are you talking about, Judaism? He said, no, Lonnie, Christianity. And so, the relationship I have with him was it's pretty special relationship. I've had him on my show a few times when I had my radio platform. And he has a unique understanding of Christianity, which, well, if I was to pull back the vest, I think it's only a matter of time before he, joins a part of our team. But he he's got a unique way of putting things together in terms of how that's happening in Israel, obviously, in the States, but in particular in Iran.
And I think Trump can play a big part in that. Just like Reagan played a huge part in bringing down communism, Trump can play a big part in bringing down a lot of these Islamists. Just for clarification, you should understand. And I was meeting with. I have a very good friend who's a Muslim, a very Muslim fundamentalist, but he believes Islam needs a reformation, just like Christianity, right? So and he goes to a Islamic mosque where that is taught, and they've had lots of death threats because people are like, "No, how can you say that?" But he says, Neil, one thing you've not realized, because we were talking about all the different regimes. He says, what you haven't realized is that all of these regimes are communist regimes.
Mm-hmm.
Think about Israel, Iraq. Think about Saddam Hussein. Think about they're all socialist communist regimes, and they're infiltrated with the Marxist doctrines. And that's because the Marxist doctrine is one of the most effective way to control people look at Russia and China, right? They're saying, look, this is the only way we can control people. So they're not, and of course he's arguing they're not really Islamists. Now I argued that they were, because they were teaching what's in the Quran, and he said, no, you're taking it out of context. Well, that's fine. I didn't want to go too far into that with him, but the point is, his thing was that even if you take it in context, the people who are running it are all Marxists. In fact, if you look at the Ayatollah Khomeini, what he was doing in France, he was embedded with the Marxists, according to them. So this is another communist regime that we're facing. And you saw I don't know if it was printed yet, my article on what if Trump did what.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you to talk about that, because at the same time, when we talk about this rise in faith, we're also persecution against Christians.
Yeah.
Right, is also in a lot of places. And, sometimes I wonder, is it because we have internet and news, because people have cell phones and they can take videos and photos and get things out in a way that they couldn't before? Is that why we think that there's a rise? Because a lot of these countries, people now really have access to phones.
And we would not have known it before. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question.
Yeah.
But as far as persecution, though, the persecution is definitely. Well, I mean, again, in my article, I don't say it's rising. I just say it's high, because I do know that in times of persecution, like when China, depending on who the regime is, China goes after people more or less, and certain Muslim regimes go after Christians more than others. Like, for instance, Saddam Hussein never went after Christians. In fact, they were very safe under Saddam Hussein, and they were very safe in Israel under Hafiz al-Assad, because they decided that they were going to be fine with the Christians. But now that the Muslim Brotherhood, the communists have come in, it's going to change, and that's what happened in Iraq too. But the Christians are persecuted higher than any other religion, and maybe it's because there are more Christians than there are anything else. But you also realize that the threat of Christianity is far greater than the threat of any other religion, because Islam really only grows through conquest or birth rate. Hinduism is rapidly dying, so they're not growing at all. Buddhism is supposedly a pacifist religion, but it doesn't really, because there are places in Burma that are killing non-Buddhists. So, but the religion that's growing the fastest, right, if you just talk about witnessing and not about birth rate, is Christianity. Wow. We're going far faster than any rate because it's in our gene. Of course, the Jews don't even witness, so it's not going to be Judaism. It's going to be Christianity, and so therefore everybody sees that as a threat, and that's why we're seeing all this persecution. So my article basically says, why are we allowing this? As we already have protections. We spoke out when the Muslims were being killed by the Chinese. We spoke out when minority religions are being persecuted by other people. But no president has ever stood in the gap and said, we got to stop the persecution of Christians. And this is a chance for Donald Trump to make a huge difference in the world and to be remembered forever if he says, no, you kill a single Christian. I don't care what he is or what he is. You kill a single Christian, for a blasphemy law or whatever it is, we are going to stop trade with you. For you thought tariffs were bad? You're going to see. You ain't saying nothing yet. Pakistan, we're going to stop any military supply for you. You're not going to get a single plane from us. Saudi Arabia, just go down the list. Iran, there's so many things we can still do with Iran to stop them from persecuting.
What about Nigeria, though?
Nigeria has a
Nigeria always surprises me.
Nigeria,
why?
Absolutely.
Nigeria really surprises me.
Yeah.
I was just saying, it surprises me on the brutality of
the Fulani tribesmen.
of what they're doing to Christians.
Yeah. The Fulani tribesmen, right? The guys come in, they kill the Christians, they kidnap the girls, and the government does nothing. The government's supposed to be Christian. In fact, there are more Christians in Nigeria than there are non-Christians, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And we all know the story of the pastor that we met with, whose brother was kidnapped just before we got there, right? And he paid that ransom.
Mm-hmm.
So just horrible stuff. And Trump could certainly, he could make a declaration, and Nigerian government better produce. Otherwise, guess what? Not going to happen. No trade, no deals. And that would be huge. And I think that
Yeah.
will help. Like, so if we start doing that to Iran says, well, we hate you anyway, we're going to kill you. And we're like, no, we're going to start pulling these strings because now we have a purpose to stop you. Iran will back off or may back off, we think. We don't know. See how they play the game. But it will also give him another arrow in his quiver to say, look, we're going to stop this. This is another reason why we're coming after you. And these can change regimes. Regimes can change, just like it changed in Poland.
That's right.
We are going to wrap up, but I just have to throw this in. South Africa. So when he came to the president's office, and the president's like, "Oh, let me show you this video." What's your thoughts on, what's happening in South Africa? I mean, I'm over here in Kenya, right? And so it's unfortunate to think that they might go the way. I don't know that they could go the way of Zimbabwe, because when Zimbabwe was a very prosperous agricultural country until they kicked out all the white farmers and took the land. And then they declined to be one of the poorest countries because nobody knew how to farm, and then they couldn't feed themselves. And I think South Africa has a lot more structural systems because of apartheid. I'm not trying to say that they're when they were ruled by by the whites that it was good for them. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the whites put up a lot of infrastructure in place.
Same with India.
That
right?
other African.
Same with India. When the Brits left, they left railroads and schedules and departments, and it was all very organized.
So what was your thoughts? Anyone want to say anything about South Africa? No?
I thought it was great because we aren't going to see that many jokers show up and pretend that everything's all right. They better clean house before they come visit Trump.
Yeah.
You want a trade deal? You better watch out.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was good.
Yeah, because nothing is off the table.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
thought it was
Kevin.
good that he showed exactly he brought receipts. He didn't just, assert that, hey, you guys are wrong. And he brought receipts and said, look, this is what we're seeing right now. Explain it. And the guy was, he didn't have nothing to say. It's like his own government officials up there saying, yeah, kill the Boer, kill the white South African. It's like, so, yeah.
Yeah. I think that does set a little bit of a precedence. I mean, I think people thought things that happened with Zelensky were comedy,
Right.
But what happened with South Africa, that was like, listen, if we got to put the proof out on the table in public, we will put the proof out on the table.
Right.
So you need to be serious when you come to the table with us.
And what's interesting is, remember, we divested out of South Africa because they were hurting the blacks. We put pressure on them for hurting the blacks. I think it would be very appropriate to put pressure on them for hurting the whites. I mean, it's not, we don't see the color of the person, it's human lives. If you start oppressing humans, we're going to divest, we're going to you're going to have consequences, right? That's natural, and that's what we should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it is. Well, this has been a good conversation. We hopped around the globe here, had many different conversations, and I thought it was good. All right, everyone, we thank you so much for joining us tonight and Mavericks and Faith, and we will see you again soon.